14 years. That's how long David sat in the same building, same badge, same parking spot before he found out what he was actually worth. And he found out almost by accident. Here's where he was before that happened. It was at 9:40 on a Tuesday night. He's sitting in his truck in his own driveway, engine off, not going inside yet. He'd just gotten off a call with the new VP, vice president, his fourth boss in 3 years, who had spent 40 minutes with him explaining a reorg that means David's team gets folded into someone else's org chart. No new title, no new pay, just a new person to explain himself to. Again, his wife texted an hour ago asking if he was almost home, and he hasn't answered. He's just sitting there running the numbers in his head, thinking 22 years of experience, a team that hits its numbers every single quarter, and somehow he still feels like he's got to prove himself every few months, usually to someone new. And he's got to prove that he belongs in the room. That's not burnout, that's something else. And by the end of this episode, I want you to be able to name it, because I think a lot of you are sitting in that same truck. This is the Company of One, the show for professionals who want more control over where their career goes without necessarily blowing up everything that you've got. I'm Dale Callahan. I run a graduate program in engineering management at a major university. And most of what we talk about there comes straight from conversations like the one I'm about to tell you. So let's go back to David. David runs a technical team inside of a large company. Good salary, the kind of number most people would stop complaining about, right? Strong reviews. He's the guy people call when something is actually broken and nobody else can figure out why, right? We know this guy, and some of you are this guy. If you've ever worked for a big organization, you know the type. Every team has one person like David, and everyone quietly knows the place would struggle without him. From the outside, there's no reason for David to feel stuck, and that's exactly what made it confusing for him. He kept telling me when he called me, he says, I should feel fine. I don't know why I don't. We got into it a little, and what turned out, this wasn't really about the reorg or the new VP or one bad week. These things come and go, right? It was the pattern. 4 managers in 3 years. Every single one wanting him to re-explain, re-justify, reprove the value of his work he had been doing at a high level for over 2 decades. He described it to me like this. He said, I feel like I keep getting hired for the same job over and over, and nobody ever tells me that I've got it. Right? You ever felt that way? I know a lot of us have. Then he told me something that had happened a few weeks earlier, almost as a side note. A guy he used to work with reached out, a small company. He had a technical problem. He needed somebody sharp to look at it, right, for a few weeks. Nothing glamorous, the same kind of problem David solves on his day job 3 or 4 times a month without even thinking about it. He took it on evenings and weekends. And he told me, and this is the part that stuck with me, I don't know why, but it felt completely different. Same skills, same brain, same kind of problem he had been solving for years. But this time, it felt like it mattered. And that is a turning point. Right? Have you ever had that happen where you feel like suddenly my work matters, but it's not in the place that you expected? That's what's happening to David. So let's turn this around. So I asked David the obvious question. What was actually different? And he went back and forth for a while before it clicked because he didn't know. He couldn't figure out what was the difference between the day job and all the reorganizations and this little side gig. It wasn't the money. It wasn't easier. If anything, it was more work squeezed into nights that he didn't really have to spare. What was different was that somebody had chosen him, specifically him. Not, we need a senior engineer, whoever's available. Someone had a problem, thought of David by name, and paid him to solve it. All of his experience in the 22 years he had stopped thinking about because, it was his job, was suddenly visible again. Somebody could see it, even if his own company had stopped noticing. And it's not a company, it's people, right? But only if the people in the company had stopped noticing. And that's when the questions started pouring out of him. Should he start consulting on the side? For real, build a website, get an LLC, start posting on LinkedIn, try to land a board seat somewhere. He rattled off 6 or 7 different ideas in the span of 2 minutes. I didn't have time to answer it. And none of them were bad ideas exactly. They were just all over the map. If you've ever felt that pull, there's something more out there and I just don't know what. You know exactly what that scattershot shotgun feeling is like. You just start searching, right? It starts to be painful, and you start looking for hope. So you see, the moment people sense there's more available to them, they start collecting advice from everywhere instead of doing the one thing that would probably actually help. And that's where David had gotten to. So let's think about the problem here. Here's where I think almost everybody in David's position gets it wrong. And I include myself in this earlier in my career, and maybe tomorrow. They skip the most important question. Instead of asking, what have I actually built over the last 20 years? They jump straight to, what should I do next? And those are completely different questions. If you don't know what you're actually sitting on, you have no way to judge whether you're starting an LLC or joining a board or doing some side consulting, if it's even the right move for you specifically. You're just picking off of a menu and it's a menu that other people wrote, right? We watch social media, LinkedIn all the time, and we see all these options, and they're true options. But you don't need all these options, you need one. So let's think about your house. Let's think about a house analogy for a minute. And I told David this. Think about somebody who's lived in the same house for 25 years. They stopped noticing it. The hardwood floors under the carpet, the workshop out back, they built themselves. The way the afternoon light comes through the kitchen window, all the little upgrades they've made over the 2 decades, and they've completely stopped seeing it because they live there every day. Then a realtor walks through for 5 minutes and starts pointing out 4 things the owner had forgotten were even worth anything. And that's what happens with a career. You live inside it every single day for 20 years, and you stop seeing what makes it valuable because it's just Tuesday to you. It takes somebody from the outside or a project like the ones David had stumbled into to make you see it. I had the same experience one time looking for rental property. I was driving all over the place looking at these rental places of what should I rent, finding these wonderful houses, thinking maybe we should buy one and move into one of these, and drove back to my home and pulled up in the driveway and thought, this is better than any of those. And why don't we just rent this? I mean, I had to step away, right? And this is what we get blinders for what's right in front of us all the time. We do it. It's natural. It's not anything wrong with David or me or you. So let's think about, though, in David's case, what your employer actually taught you. Right? What is your employer teaching you? And they don't necessarily mean to. See, most of us describe ourselves by our job title, and that's part of the trap. I'm an engineer. I'm a project manager. I'm in operations. Those aren't your assets. Those are payroll categories, if you will, your company uses to decide what to pay you and where to put your desk, what building, what office you're in. Your actual assets look more like leading a team through a change nobody wanted, taking something complicated and explaining it so a non-technical executive actually gets it, being the person a nervous customer trusts on when he calls, negotiating a project worth real money, training the next generation of engineers or whatever they are coming up behind you, spotting a pattern 3 weeks before anybody else notices there's a problem. Now, I'm talking in generalities and maybe a little bit here, but those things transfer. Those things are portable. Your employer only ever paid you to use a slice of what you're actually capable of. And most of us never stop to add up the rest of it. We would call this in the business world assets. All right, these are assets. Assets are things that can generate cash. All right, so let me give you a second example, though. Give you this one because David's not unusual. This is a pattern. I hear it constantly. Different words, different people, different circumstances, but think of someone, I'll call him Marcus, manufacturing engineer, mid-career, works for a firm that does highly technical, highly specialized contract work. The kind of place where if you need something built to spec, everybody in the industry already knows who to call, right? Marcus is good at the actual engineering, but that's not really his standout skill. His standout skill is sitting in a room with people who have zero technical background, investors, executives, customers, and making them understand exactly what the risk is and why it matters in plain language without dumbing it down so much that it stops being true, right? He can speak English to real people. He never thought of that as a skill. He just thought, it's just how I talk. It wasn't until a startup building a hardware for a completely different industry brought him in for one meeting just to explain a technical risk for their board. It's then that he realized companies would pay him specifically for that, not for the engineering, for the translating. That one meeting turned into a standing advisory agreement. A few hours a month, completely separate from his day job, paying him more per hour than his salary works out to. His asset was training complex technical risk into language a room full of non-engineers could act on. What it opened up was a paid advisory, and he never would have thought to go looking for it because he didn't know that skill had a price tag until somebody else put one on it, right? So this is David. When I'm on the phone call with David, AI came up because AI comes up in every single conversation right now, right? It's the savior or to blame for everything. So AI comes up, and here's something kind of worth sitting with about AI. Today you can open up any AI tool, right? Grok, ChatGPT, Claude, you name it, and ask, what should I do next with my career? And give it a whole bunch of data, your resume, all this kind of stuff. And it will hand you a perfectly reasonable list. Right now, David had done this, right? Start a business, build a personal brand, network more, join a board, get a board seat, create content on social media. None of that advice is bad, but no AI tool can tell you which one of those actually fits you. It's throwing out a list because it doesn't really know and understand what you're sitting on today. Maybe it will get better, but that's not where we are today. You see, advice without self-awareness actually creates more overwhelm. It's David's list of 6 ideas generated a little faster, is all it was. Strategy doesn't start with a list of options. It starts with knowing your own assets. So if you're sitting where David was, successful on paper, restless underneath, don't start with what should I do next. Start with 3 questions instead. What problems do people consistently bring to me over and over without being asked? Now, let me just tell you right there, what questions do people consistently bring to me? You have blinders on there. You're asked them all day and you dismiss them. You don't dismiss them, you answer them, but you don't even see them as real valid questions because they're so stupid obvious to you. That's the questions I'm talking about. Ones that you're just like, yeah, everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. That's the questions. All right, so look for those questions. You may know them. You may have to watch for them in the next couple of days or weeks, but pay attention. What are people asking you? Number two, what do I do naturally that other people seem to generally struggle with? It's related, right? The thing of just how you solve problems, how you go about thinking about things, how you go about explaining things, what just is your natural way? Like David, it's just how I talk. Or Marcus, I forget which one had told me that. Now, number 3, if someone hired me directly instead of my employer, what exactly would they be paying me for? Okay, now I don't mean job title, I don't mean what desk, I don't mean what project, I mean what do they need, what problem are you solving? Right, maybe it's the case of designing something, maybe it's the case of explaining something, maybe it's the case of giving customers warm and fuzzy confidence, whatever those things are. That takes a little digging, probably, for most of you. Those questions, those surface actual assets. Assets create real options, you see. And options are what turn into an actual strategy instead of a list of 6 things that you saw somebody else do on LinkedIn. So what can you do with this, though? I'm giving you some examples, but you're like, that's great, Dale, but what do I do? Don't just nod along and close this out. Do the version of this David and Marcus both stumbled into by accident, but you do it on purpose, okay? Tonight, write down these 3 questions I just gave you and answer each one in a single sentence, not a paragraph, 1 sentence. That sounds easy. It's probably not, and probably you'll have to sit on it for a couple of days to actually get clarity on that 1 sentence. Then this week, pick 1 answer and test it. Send an email, take a phone call, offer 1 hour of that skill to somebody outside your company and just see what they say. That's it. We're not looking for big, strong wins. We're looking for test. We're testing ideas because you think this is an asset. You think you've clarified it. Now, let me just tell you, some people have told me I don't have any assets. I've really had somebody tell me that before. And if you don't have any assets, they're not paying you. So I think you're lying to yourself. I'm going to go further than think. You are lying to yourself. A company's not dumb enough to pay you if you're not adding value, and it's the assets that you have that's adding value. You just are probably blind to them, right? But that's it. That's the inventory starting, right? You don't need 6 ideas. You need 1 honest answer and 1 small test, and then another small test, and then another small test. What you saw with David is he went from feeling lost and stuck to realizing somebody wanted him. You see, I don't think David is stuck. I don't think most of you listening are stuck either. We use that word, we throw it around. I hear it almost daily, multiple times daily, often, that people are stuck. I think you're standing on 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years of experience that you've never actually taken time to inventory. We keep looking for the next opportunity out there somewhere when it usually starts by understanding what's already here, sitting under our own hardwood floors. your next move probably isn't going to come from learning a new skill, a new certification, a new degree. It's going to come from you looking at what you've already built and finally seeing it clearly. That's the biggest mistake most successful people make. Not that they stop growing, but they stop seeing themselves clearly.